Hi, I'm Matt Shepard. Coming up on this edition of Shep, Shower, and Shave, don't believe the lies. I still can't like the Yankees. And what we saw in Game 1 from the Pistons. Shep, Shower, and Shave is brought to you by Hungry Howie's, the Michigan-based pizza company known as the original flavored crust pizza. Check them out today. And you know what? If you're looking for a way to get your kids and your school programs some money. I mean, look, I'm a dad. They've had to go through, my kids have had to go through all kinds of fundraisers. Make it easy on yourself and on your school and on your program and on your child. Go to doughraiser.com. We're also brought to you on Northwestern Tech. You know, some of these big HVAC companies, they're looking for really good qualified help. All you have to do is ask them where you should go to get your type of education. They'll tell you it's Northwestern Tech because they've been doing it successfully for over 38 years. Call them today, 248-358-4006. We're also brought to you by Nate Noth Designs. He did our Shep, Shower, and Shave logo, so you can find him on Instagram and on Facebook. I don't know if you watched the Jay Billis interview with Rick Pitino last night on ESPN. I did, and I think Jay Billis, by the way, sometimes a little bit high on his horse, but excellent questions. He didn't soft-toss questions to him. But the belief that Rick Pitino didn't know what was going on with his program is really troubling for me. And I have this message to my kids all the time. Here's the message. When it comes to trust, and that's a huge word. If you're a parent, you understand it. If you're a spouse, you get it. If you're a coach/player, you get it. If you're a boss, who do you trust in your office? Who do you trust on your team to get something done without having to look over their shoulder all the time? With my kids, I say this all the time with trust. Trust is an easy thing to lose. It's a very difficult thing to regain. So don't burn me. Well, Rick Pitino has burned people time and time again. All right? If you look at what he's had to explain, August of 2009. Oh, yes, Karen Cipher, the ex-wife of one of his former staff members. Yes, those two had engaged in an extramarital affair. In February of 2015, he had to quickly dismiss one of his players. His player's name was Chris Jones. Just before he was arrested for rape and sodomizing two women in a campus dorm room. In 2015, it was early October. Oh, look at, there's somebody who's hired dancers and escorts for sex parties for Cardinals players and recruits. And by the way, that went on for 5 years. 5 years. And then fast forward to this year, and really it started in October of 2016, where the NCAA has worked or found out from FBI investigators that suddenly guys are getting paid. And he's trying to tell me and you and anybody else who will listen that he didn't know. I travel with college basketball. I've been doing it for a long, long time. This is not a football team where you're trying to account for 84 players or at home over 100. This isn't even hockey where you're trying to account for 25, right? Or baseball where you're trying to account for 35. This is basketball where you're trying to account for roughly 14 and you've got 4 coaches, the head coach and 3 assistants. So basically, if you want to break it down that way, you're responsible for about 3.5 players per guy. Now, maybe Rick Pitino and Louisville, when they show up to wherever it is they're playing, they jump off the bus and he goes up into his suite and watches film. Maybe he hangs out at the hotel bar and lets his players get as much freedom as they want. Maybe he and his assistant coaches choose to go out to dinner and let the players have their free time to themselves. Here's what I know, and I travel with John Beeline and his staff at the University of Michigan. They travel 7 o'clock at night, the night before a game. land at wherever it is we may be landing, jump on a bus, go to the hotel, have a film session of the practice they just conducted, have a smoothie bar and sandwiches, and then it's to bed. In the morning, you wake up, you eat breakfast together, you go to shoot around, you come back, you have a film session, you go up, you take a nap, you come back down, you have dinner, you're on the bus, and you play. It's very constructive. And maybe that's not the way Rick Pitino and his group have handled their business. And he's a quote-unquote Hall of Fame coach. And he's done plenty of winning in his career. Wink, wink. Has it always been on the up and up? Hell no, it has not. Now, I probably shouldn't even use John Beilein as an example because John Beilein was voted as the cleanest coach in America. Rick Pitino, I don't know where he fell on that list. Now, there is no list for Rick Pitino except for scandal and shaming, and that's what he's done. He's done it to his school. He's done it to his program. He's done it to his profession. And now he's trying to convince us that because he supposedly passed a lie detector test and that he's got this great support from his players that he's vindicated. I think it's irresponsible. I think it's scary. I don't know who in their right mind would want their child to play for a guy like Rick Pitino when he has no control. He's throwing his assistant coaches under the bus. Jay, the only thing that I'm guilty of is putting trust in my assistant coaches. Dude, it's your program. Your name is on that door. You're the guy who everybody associates with Louisville. You are one of the most powerful men in the state with John Calipari. You're the most powerful man at that school. And that's what's happened in sports. Sports today is more about power than anything else. And you know who wields the most power? It's the football coaches and it's the basketball coaches. Now, I'm not talking about Minnesota Duluth, okay? I'm not talking about some of the smaller schools where there is a heavy-handed hockey coach who might be in charge. Or maybe Gino Auriemma at UConn. For the most part, 99% of the schools in America, those guys, if they're successful, coaches of football and basketball, are the power-wielding men on campus. But Rick Pitino, to say he didn't know this was going on, where agents were meeting with players and people and money was being exchanged, I just find it really hard to believe unless you're either A, turning a blind eye, or B, not as close to your players as most coaches should be. I see primarily more than a Michigan State, and obviously Michigan more because I call Michigan basketball. But I see them more than anybody, and I see how Tom Izzo handles his situation. I see how John Beilein handles his situation. I see a lot of the Big Ten coaches in general and what they're doing. They're not marching off the bus in front of their players, going to their hotel room and burying their head in the sand. They're making sure that their players are under a very strict type of routine so they can monitor everything that's been going on. Obviously, Rick Pitino didn't do that. And that's what's lost in this conversation. While we try to look at, and he tries to figure out, oh, I'm vindicated because of the love and the support of my players, and I'm not worried about my legacy because it's irrelevant, which is all bullcrap, okay? I don't care who you are. You know, many of you would listen. You've either met coaches or you've met players or you've heard them talk enough. You've heard maybe me talk about. There's plenty of ego to go around, plenty of it. So that's bullcrap about what his legacy is. He's about trying to save a lot of money, too, okay? This is a guy whose salary was going to be close to $8 million, okay? He had $45 million in salary and bonuses remaining on his contract. His contract ran through 25-26. And now he's going to sue Adidas. Just keep in mind this. Remember when the Louisville Courier-Journal reported a while back that Rick Pitino received 98% of the cash Louisville was expected to receive for 5 years. That's what they did. Adidas, Louisville, whatever the case may be, here you go. Here's the Adidas contract. You get 98% of it. All right? Is that incredible or what? That's a 10-year, $160 million Louisville pact with the shoe and apparel situation. And Rick Pitino gets 98%, I believe, of just the basketball portion of it. But still, that's plenty. And his boss, Tom Urich, who we'll get to here in a minute, obviously was behind all of it. But you talk about shame. You talk about a really difficult situation for the new coach to be in. He can't even go into Rick Pitino's office. And maybe it's so slimy, I don't know why you'd want to. But you talk about an embarrassment of a school. I remember reading a quote from Urich who said, you've got to fix athletics and the school will fall in line. Well, Urich is now fired, and rightfully so, because I don't know how that dude sleeps at night. Pig of a human being, selling his soul to the devil, and all those other cliches you want to use. Here's a guy who hires Rick Pitino, stands by him during the extramarital affair. Okay. Then he actually stands by him during the whole controversy of recruits having prostitutes and strippers at their various visits. And I know some of you might be going, hey, man, that sounds great to me, so on and so forth. I want you to think about it for a second. I want you to think about it. If it's your school, the one that you support, the one you write a check to, the one you've decorated your office in, the one you have purchased a T-shirt for, or maybe it's your kid. What if your kid was going there? And as much as you may think it's funny, ha-ha, if that's the stuff that's going on, are you really proud of your school or your kid? Much lesser degree, my son went through a recruiting process. If that's taking place, they're off the list. Instead, that sometimes seals the deal for some of these kids. And Urich stood behind him for that as well. How many strikes does a guy get? In addition to that, what does Urich do? I think I'll hire Bobby Petrino back. You talk about a waste of a university. Bobby Petrino and Rick Pitino go hand in hand. They're perfect for one another. You know the timeline for Bobby Petrino, right? He was a Jaguars offensive coordinator. Then he took the offensive coordinator gig at Auburn. Didn't tell Tom Coughlin with Jacksonville. Never told him. 1 year at Auburn, he takes the Louisville head coaching job. Now, that's a bump. How can you really blame him? But while he accepts the Louisville job, he interviews with Auburn boosters for the Auburn head coaching job. And he lied about it. He told the people, Tom Urich specifically, his Louisville boss, I'm not doing that. I mean, Tommy Tuberville hadn't been fired yet. But he said, I'm not in contact with anybody. Two reporters from the Louisville Courier-Journal confronted him with documentation of a private plane that brought the university, Auburn University's president, and their AD to Petrino's backyard. Two of them. They confronted him. And then he had to give in, right? Peter Volk and Jason Kirk did it. Then from 2004 to 2006, he's interviewing Notre Dame. He interviewed with LSU. He interviewed with the Raiders. But he kept telling everybody, I'm not interested in any other jobs. In 2006, he signed a 10-year extension at Louisville. So I'm not going anywhere. I want to make this statement. I just want everyone to know this is where I want to be. And then what happens? 2007. Okay, so July 2006, he signs a 10-year extension. So August, September, October, November, December, 6 months later, almost to the day, he's hired as the Atlanta Falcons head coach. And one of the Louisville players says, I'm in shock. I mean, we just had a great Orange Bowl win, and now this dude's going to Atlanta. And Bobby Petrino takes the Falcons gig, 13 games in. 13 games into his tenure as the Atlanta Falcons head coach, he writes a letter and pins it on the door of the locker room. That's what he did. He wrote a letter to his players, 78 words, not going to do this anymore. Lawyer Malloy, remember the cornerback? He wrote coward in a red Sharpie on the piece of paper. Mike Zimmer, who's now the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, he was the defensive coordinator. He called him a gutless bastard. The same night that he resigned from the Falcons, he was named the head coach at Arkansas. How about that? The same night. He gets into a crash a few years later on a motorcycle with a 25-year-old former Arkansas volleyball player. And she was also, I think, a football assistant, a team assistant. He was having an affair, lied about that, all right? Tried to hide that she was actually there, asked a witness, don't call 911, please. Said it was a single car, single motorcycle accident. They look into things. They find out that he had been paying the mistress thousands and thousands of dollars. Lied to his athletic director, Jeff Long, in 2012. Gets fired. Finally gets fired. Hired at Western Kentucky. And then, as soon as he's hired at Western Kentucky, rumors about him going to Arkansas State and Colorado and all these other places. Had some issues there as well. And then, in 2014, he gets hired again by Louisville. By the same guy he lied to, and the same guy he screwed over, who took years to fix his mess. Urich. That's the timeline for Bobby Petrino. So you wonder why Tom Urich gets the axe? I wonder how in the world he kept his job in the first place. Who in their right mind, if they cared about their child at all, would want to send their child academia or athletically to that place when it's run athletic-wise by a bunch of male chauvinist pigs? And I know some people, and there's very few, support Urich in the fact that he got a new building, got the name of a certain stadium, moved the team to the ACC. Who cares? Honestly. He's got two guys who are supposed to be leaders. Folks, we're talking about leadership positions. Athletic directors, head basketball coaches, head football coaches. What they're supposed to do, part of being a head coach at a major university, sure, is to try and help that individual achieve their dream. I want to be in the NBA. Okay, we'll do everything we can to get you there. I want to play in the NFL. We'll do everything we can to get you there. But along that road, the leadership, the impact, the relationship of those coaches is supposed to be more important. At least that's what I thought. I thought it was more important to be there so you can pick up the phone and call me if you need something. If you need some help getting a job, one of my contacts might be able to help you with that. We want to make sure you get a quality education so we can help you not just at the next level in the NBA or the NFL in this case, but afterwards as well, or while you're there, so it helps you prepare for life after sports, since we all know that longevity is minimized more and more, especially in the game of football. These guys, do you really want them being in touch with your child? The person who you gave birth to and raised. Many of these kids come from single-parent families. raised them for 18 years. This is a big deal to me. You're turning them over to men who are supposed to shape some of the most formative years of their lives. You're turning them over to men who are supposed to help them become men, good men. Treat people right. You think either one of these guys take that part of the job seriously? Hell no. And neither does that athletic director. Shame on Louisville. Shame on Tom Murich. Shame on Rick Pitino. And shame on Bobby Petrino, and really that entire fiasco of a board of trustees that allows him to stay in that position. How degrading. How sick. How wrong. Shep Shower and Shave is brought to you by Hungry Howie's, the Michigan-based pizza company known as the original flavored crust pizza. By Northwestern Tech, HVAC is all they teach, and they've got flexible scheduling that allows you to keep working your job while training for an actual career. Check out their website, northwesterntech.edu. And by Nate Noth Designs, find his work on Instagram and on Facebook. He's the same guy who designed the Shep Shower and Shave logo. The New York Yankees are up 3-2 on the Houston Astros in the American League Championship Series. Little surprising. Before the playoffs began, I liked the Nationals and the Astros. I was wrong in the National League, and I could be wrong in the American League, too. New York has a chance to win a 4th straight and reach the World Series far sooner than anyone ever expected because of this team. This team, remember around the trade deadline, there were people openly saying, don't make a move, Brian Cashman, because you don't want to sell off some of your young assets. This team isn't ready to win yet. They must have forgotten just how good that bullpen is. Tommy Kahnle, right? Aroldis Chapman, Dylan Betances. I hate the Yankees. I've always hated the Yankees, and I always will hate the Yankees. Now, when I was a kid, my favorite team was the Tigers. There's no question. But when I really was able to pay attention in the 70s, 77, 78, things like that, because I was way too young for the 68 Tigers, even though I've looked back on history and appreciated all the things they were able to do. But I remember Ralph Hulk and Billy Martin as managers for the Tigers. And it really started for me in the mid to late 70s, when Alan Trammell and Lou Whitaker are there. Milton May was the catcher. Jason Thompson played first base. He was my sister Lynn's favorite player. Aurelio Rodriguez was at third base. Loved his glove, loved his arm. Didn't hit very well. Steve Kemp, who played at USC, was in left field, I think. Ron LaFleur was in center field. Rusty Staub was the DH. Phil Mankowski came off the bench a little bit. Little Johnny Wackenfuss. It was at the tail end of the career of Mickey Stanley. Jack Morris, we were just getting to know. Dave Roseman, we were just getting to know. We had to force ourselves to say, I really like Ed Glynn and guys like that, right? That was in the late 70s, mid to late 70s. The Yankees were kicking everybody's ass back then. And it's not just because of the number of championships they've won. It's how they were built, how they were able to get those championships. When the World Series would come around, because I hated the Yankees, and remember back then it was the Tigers in the East, and the Yankees were also in the East. I mean, there was a year where the Tigers had a pretty good season. They were like 10, 12 games above 500. They're finishing 5th in the American League East. And the Yankees are going to the World Series on a regular basis. Well, we might see the Yankees and Dodgers, because the Dodgers are up 3-1 on the Cubs in the National League Championship Series. We might see the Yankees and Dodgers in the World Series for a 12th time. Really impactful for me when I was a kid, because in 77, the Yankees beat the Dodgers 4-2. Reggie Jackson, remember the incredible run Reggie Jackson had? He had 4 homers in 4 swings. Seriously. I think he had 4 homers in 4 swings. He had a 2-run bomb off Bert Hooton. He had a solo shot off Don Sutton. But I believe I remember reading that Jackson's homers came on the first pitch of his at-bat. So he had 4 homers in 4 swings. It was unbelievable. They won in 6 games. 1978, the year right after. And I like the Dodgers. I like Garvey at first, former Spartan. I liked Lopes at second. I like Russell at short. I like the Penguin Ron Say at third. I like Reggie Smith. I like Rick Monday. I liked Steve Yeager. They got beat 4-2 the next year, too. I hated Greg Nettles. My brother loved Greg Nettles. We had posters in our room. I had Garvey. He had Nettles. 4-2. Thurman Munson. I actually liked Thurman Munson. I think he was the catcher back then. Then they met again in 1981. So my brother's rooting for the Yankees. I'm rooting for the Dodgers. And he's got the upper hand on me in 77 and 78. And I'm 3 years older than him. That's a bruised ego. Tommy Lasorda comes into the whole scene. He was a rookie manager when they got to the World Series. I believe it was in 78, or maybe it was 77. But I know he was in that mix finally because Walter Alston really never could get him there. But I think Tommy Lasorda was a rookie manager in 77. You know, Ron Guidry was pitching for the Yankees. Charlie Huff was pitching for the Dodgers. A lot of these big names, right? And then in 1981, the Dodgers win it 4-2, and I felt great. I felt like there was some vindication there for me. Fernando Valenzuela was unbelievable, and all this other stuff. Pedro Guerrero, all that stuff. But the Yankees, I always felt, built their teams because they could outspend everybody. And I think they did. I mean, if you recall, 77, they had brought Reggie Jackson over from the Oakland A's. They got Catfish Hunter from the Oakland A's. Well, if you look at these Yankees now, people, I was talking with a friend of mine at the gym this morning. His name's Kevin Wilson. He's a huge Yankees fan, always has been. So he said to me, Shep, how about my Yankees? And I said, yeah, they've really impressed me. They're better than I thought. I don't hate them with the same vial I hated the Yankees with Bucky Dent, okay, and Reggie Jackson, and Mickey Rivers, and Chris Chambliss, and players like that, Craig Nettles. Actually, I didn't mind Chambliss all that much, and I didn't mind Thurman Munson. But I said, I don't hate them with that same type of vigor, but I'm sure as hell not rooting for them. I'll never root for them. I don't like them. I've never liked them. Is there a jealousy involved? Could be, sure. I'm not afraid to admit that. I just don't like the fact that they can go out and outspend everybody. And it's not the bad contracts, right? It's not the contracts of A.J. Burnett where you're like, oh, my God, what are you doing, right? It's the contracts of guys that they can spend money on who fail. See, there are other teams who can spend the money. The problem is if those teams spend that money and it fails, then your team is screwed for a while. The Yankees can recover faster than anybody else. All right? That's the difference. They can go out and they can spend money on who was it? Rafael Soriano. And it wouldn't matter. They can blow money on Russell Martin or Eric Chavez or players like that and it not come to fruition. It's okay. They can recover from that. Teams who don't have that kind of money would never, it would take a long time before they could recover from that type of mistake. But I was talking with my buddy Kevin and I said, look, I'm happy for you. I'm not going to root for them. But don't feed me this bullcrap line that they're built the right way. Because they're not. It's not like they're all coming from their farm system. Aaron Judge, Gary Sanchez, and Luis Severino are from their farm system. Sonny Gray was acquired at the trade deadline. Aroldis Chapman is in a trade. Masahiro Tanaka, same thing, free agent. Okay? Chris Carter, Matt Holliday, all free agents. Didi Gregorius, Aaron Hicks, Chad Green, Starlin Castro, all trades. Which goes to show you what? There are different ways to build teams. And I can't be hypocritical. I'm not going to Chase Headley, also acquired. Todd Frazier, acquired. These guys aren't, they're not, these guys aren't homegrown products for the New York Yankees. So let's be careful on this stuff. If you look at their roster and you look at who's made the impact, you think to yourself, wow. See, everyone gets caught up in Aaron Judge. Wow, homegrown. There's a lot of guys, most of the guys aren't. Chapman, Garcia, Gray, Green, Canely, Sabathia, for example. They're not homegrown. Castro, Frazier, Gregorius, Headley, not homegrown. Ellsbury, Hicks, not homegrown. Matt Holliday, not homegrown. Brett Gardner, you could say, yeah, homegrown. All right? Which is okay, by the way. Because I don't want to be a hypocrite here. My favorite team of all time, if you've listened to any of these podcasts or my shows, you know it's the 1984 Detroit Tigers. It's my favorite team of any team in history. Okay? That's my team, always has been, always will be. Alan Trammell's my favorite player of all time, always has been, always will be. But I also have to look at myself in the mirror a little bit. I thought, oh, you know what? These guys all homegrown. Sure, Paris was homegrown. Whitaker, Trammell, homegrown. Kirk Gibson, homegrown. Remember this. Dave Bergman was acquired, and he was a big piece to that puzzle. Larry Herndon, big piece to the puzzle. Right? I mean, 1987, he hit the solo home run that allowed Frank Tanana and the Tigers to beat the Blue Jays and win the East. And then they got screwed in the West because you had to play Minnesota at the Baggy Dome, even though Detroit had the better record. Darrell Evans, he was a big acquisition in 1984. Big acquisition. Dude had, came up with 16 homers, something like that year. He was an acquisition. They weren't all the guys that you expected to be there and watching them come through the minors. So you got to be a little bit careful when you start judging other teams and how they're built. I think, obviously, Detroit back in 84 had more homegrown product than this 2017 New York Yankees team does. But, folks, there are different ways to build teams. I think 39% of the Yankees roster this year was built on trades. 14% from free agency, and most of it through amateur. If you look at the last time they were really competitive, which would be, 2012? Free agency made up 53%. 53% of what they did. So they have done it differently. I just don't buy the fact that they're all homegrown products. They're not. Now, if you look at the 2006 Tigers, for example, because some of you can't remember the 1984, Ivan Rodriguez, right? Free agent. Placido Polanco, not homegrown. Carlos Guillen, not homegrown. Craig Monroe, not homegrown. Maglio Ordonez, Marcus Timms, not homegrown. Sean Casey, not homegrown. So you got to be careful when it comes to that. That doesn't change my opinion or the fact that I'm not rooting for the New York Yankees. I'm rooting for the Houston Astros. I do like the Houston Astros. I think they're fun. There's a lot of people, and my buddy, not to take shots at Kev, but Kev constantly says, I really like the way the Yankees, play. They're really fun to watch. And I'm thinking, what, like the Astros aren't? I mean, it's okay to like New York. That's your prerogative. Houston won 101 games, man. They outscored their opponents by 196 runs. Same as the Yankees, roughly same as the Yankees. That team plays really good baseball on the road, at least during the regular season. They're a really fun team to watch. You're trying to tell me that you enjoy watching the Yankees, personal preference aside. You're trying to tell me that you enjoy watching the Yankees more than you enjoy watching Jose Altuve and George Springer and Carlos Correa and Josh Reddick and Alex Bregman and Marwin Gonzalez? Not me. I think Houston is as complete a team as you may find. They may not make it. And a lot of it has to do with the damn bullpen. Hi, Dave Dombrowski. Are you listening? Shep Shower and Shave brought to you by Northwestern Tech, by Hungry Howie's, and by Nate Knopf Designs. So I was at Little Caesars Arena last night for the Pistons home opener. First game ever played at Little Caesars Arena. First time that they opened a campaign since they were at Cobo Arena. And Tobias Harris looked fantastic. Look, it's a first game, so you're not going to read too much into this, okay? You're not, I'm not either. Avery Bradley, I can get behind that cat. Like him a lot, right? Henry Ellenson looked really good coming off the bench. I've always liked Ish Smith. Langston Galloway, he big-time contributor. Good for him. I mean, hit a few threes, finished with 16. Little disappointed didn't see Luke Kennard. For a team that needs shooting, for a team that used its first-round pick, and for a team that shot 34.5% from three last night, made only 9, I thought we might have seen Luke Kennard. Didn't see him. Few things that were seriously concerning for me. Stanley Johnson was 0 for 13. Only Tobias Harris took more shots in a Pistons uniform. Matter of fact, only Tobias Harris took more shots in the game. There's one other player who took as many shots as Stanley Johnson, and that's Kemba Walker. Kemba Walker is really freaking good. See, he pumped in 24. He gets to the line. Stanley Johnson went 0 for 13, 0 for 6 from deep, and got to the line twice. Now, they were a +6 with him on the floor, but damn it, that team better get more production out of Stanley Johnson than what he gave them last night. And I'm not just talking about the rebounds and the assists and the points, of which he had 4 boards, 1 assist, 2 points. He did have 4 swipes. And I'm all for defensive players. You know that. If you listen to this show long enough, you know I'm all in on defensive players. They can help you win too. But Judas, if you're going to play 40 minutes, you got to score the ball, man. The other thing that concerned me is the fact that, well, John Lure, carryover from last year, didn't shoot the ball very well. But there was a shot of Andre Drummond on the bench where Detroit's on a run. And they show everybody on the bench standing and cheering. And Andre Drummond is sitting down looking as disengaged as possible. And it's just one shot, so it's not fair. I say this about TV all the time when people say, oh, this guy's got to have more emotion. Why doesn't he do this? Why do you do? I say, where did you watch the game? And people tell me, on TV. I said, do you think the cameras are on the coach the entire time? No. Cameras are watching players play the game. Just because a coach isn't emotional at one time when the coach or when the camera's on him doesn't mean he hasn't been emotional before. So it's not fair to just criticize Andre Drummond for that one moment. But 8 points, 13 rebounds, not as many touches as you might have thought, and a guy who played just 22 minutes. Some of it could have been because of the foul trouble, because Avery Bradley had more fouls and he played about the same. But Tobias Harris had the same amount of fouls as Andre Drummond, and Tobias Harris played 34 minutes. He was the best player on the floor for either team. If the Pistons, and the Pistons they can make the playoffs in the East. If the Pistons are going to make the playoffs, Stanley Johnson and Andre Drummond cannot have those types of games on a regular basis. Combined, they cannot go 3 for 22. Combined, they can't have 10 points. You're going to have more production than that from guys who start for you. Because I don't want to rely on Eric Moreland. No offense. If that's what you're going to rely on, this is going to be a long-ass season. Shep Shower and Shave brought to you by Northwestern Tech. Heating and cooling employers are desperate for trained technicians. Where do you go? You go to Northwestern Tech. HVAC is all they teach. They've perfected their hands-on program for the last 38 years. Call them today, 248-358-4006. We're brought to you by Nate Noth Designs. See his work on Instagram or on Facebook. He's the designer of the Shep Shower and Shave logo. And we're brought to you by Hungry Howie's, the Michigan-based pizza company known as the original Flavor Crust Pizza. They also have the best fundraiser around called Dough Raiser. Go to doughraiser.com. Thanks for listening. Support our sponsors. Hope you can watch me call Pistons and Wizards on Fox Sports Detroit Plus Friday night, and then on Fox Sports Detroit when the Pistons take on the Knicks at Madison Square Garden. Until the next episode of Shep Shower and Shave, thanks for listening, everybody.